So it's Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by my good friend and top promoter, Dmitry Salita. Dmitry, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to be back on Seconds Out talking boxing.
Always a pleasure to have you on. We haven't spoken, I don't think, personally, since the deal with DAZN got over the line. Multi-show deal for you. I suppose the big question really is, how does it change the way you operate? What opportunities does it give you as a promoter that maybe you didn't have before?
Well, it changes the landscape tremendously. Certainly, in today's day and age, with all the other broadcasters being out of the meaning Showtime, with whom the business, the Big Time Boxing USA series gives our roster of talent an ability to stay busy, an ability to communicate with the fans, and gives activity, which is most important for our fighters to grow, for the sport of boxing to grow. It also helps our boxing initiative, revitalizing big time boxing in the city of Detroit. I actually have a T-shirt given to me by SugarHill Steward. Said, "Don't Brooklyn, my Detroit." But that's actually exactly what I'm trying to do. Trying to Brooklyn, Detroit, in terms of bringing big time boxing back to the city. And we're gonna have our next one, July 27th, with Claressa Shields at Little Caesars Arena, where she goes fourth division heavyweight world title and challenges the current WBC heavyweight champ from Quebec, Canada. Jonis, I don't want to butcher the last name, so I'll just leave it alone. But Jonis, the WBC heavyweight champion, we had a press conference last week. It was fantastic. She's very confident, and it's a great. It's going to be a great event.
Yeah, I saw it online. I guessed Wanis, but I wasn't sure because obviously she's from the French part of Canada, but I could
Correct.
be completely wrong. But her first name's Vanessa, so maybe we'll just stick with that. But as you've brought that up, obviously a huge opportunity for Clarissa to win a world title in another division. I'm not sure anyone expected her to go all the way up to heavyweight, but looking at previous weights and so forth on BoxRec, it looks like Vanessa is maybe a light heavyweight generally. Would that be fair
Yes,
to say?
that is true. So the fight is contract for 175 pounds, and it's a WBO light heavyweight world title, but for WBC's heavyweight world title. So I feel like, women's boxing is still kind of growing and finding its way, certainly in these higher weight classes. So different sanction bodies have it named differently, but nevertheless, she's a good fighter. And we have it, Clarissa versus Vanessa, which is like, which is could be just friends from across the street. But um, yeah, it's going to be a great card. We're going to announce the undercard, which is going to be fantastic and very big. It's going to showcase a lot of local talent as well as national, international talent in competitive fights. And a great step for Big Time Boxing USA is going to be a Little Caesars Arena, which is a big arena, a beautiful 20,000 seat building. Last time around, we had about 12,000 people looking to build our record, break that record this time around. And very excited about all the things that are going on.
So just like Sugar Ray Leonard against Donnie Lalonde, Clarissa could go from 3-weight world champion to 5-weight world champion in one night.
That's actually a great example. And another great example is Roy Jones Jr., who went up from middleweight to heavyweight to fight John Ruiz for the heavyweight world title. If Clarissa is victorious, she'll be the only fighter to join him in that uh, unique VIP class. However, with that being said, Clarissa is going to want to feels like she's going to want to come back down a weight and fight Savannah Marshall and some of the other big fights. So something that's very difficult to do, but Clarissa is focused and wants to make history every time she gets in the ring.
With that in mind, how challenging is it as Clarissa's promoter in that she clearly wants all the smoke, which is a great thing, but it's so hard to find new ground for her to break at this point. You know, she's a 3-weight world champion, double undisputed champion, double Olympic gold medalist. I could go on. I mean, you know the accolades more than I do. How do you keep finding new ground for her to cover?
You bring up a great point. So when we were looking for Clarissa's next fight, we reached out to many of the top-rated contenders and champions in middleweight, junior middleweight, super middleweight, and their fights were just impossible to make. So we thought to ourselves, what's the biggest and the best fight that we can make? And we looked up and down, and we had to look up and up, and a little further up than we thought we have to look. And we found Jonis, Vanessa Jonis, Hopefully I pronounced it correctly.
Hopefully we both
And
have, but yeah.
yeah, and it was the fight to make, and we did it with Camila Stefan, who's a promoter from Canada, who's been quite active and quite successful, has a great stable of fighters, and it was an easy deal to make. We made it fairly quickly, and about 10 days later we announced the fight. So happy how it all came together. A lot of times, you reach out and there's just a prolonged negotiation and just a prolonged period of time, and usually fights don't get made when things are prolonged. Like Don King used to say, there's 99 ways to say no and only one way to say yes. So Camille and Vanessa said yes, and then we filled in the rest, which was easy to do.
And you mentioned Savannah Marshall a couple of minutes ago. If you had to predict right now their rematch, is it more likely to take place in a boxing ring or in an MMA cage?
Well, in an MMA cage, it wouldn't be a rematch; it would be a first one because it's a different sport.
The
It's
next
like
time they meet.
the next one they meet could be in an MMA cage, but certainly the boxing ring is where it's kind of at the highest level of their combat skills. They're so competitive with each other that if they play chess, it'll be interesting. But I do believe that it's possible that an MMA fight between them can happen before the boxing match. However, I do think that rematch is just such a natural. It was such a great fight between them the first time around. So makes all the sense in the world to redo it. And we've had some conversations with her team, with her camp, and after this fight, hopefully we'll get it over the finish line. One of the things that makes it difficult is where do we hold the fight? Clarissa went to the UK. She went thousands of miles away from her home in the peak of her career as an undefeated champion, and fought Savannah Marshall. And now she feels very strongly it's not about the money, it's about principle. She feels that Savannah should come to the United States, or we should do it somewhere in a neutral site. So that's kind of been the holdup, and we'll see if we figure it out and make it happen. But I do think that it's a great fight for the sport of boxing, certainly for women's boxing, as it'll make it grow significantly in interest.
And Savannah made an interesting point along those lines last week, and when she said there's no worry about traveling to the States for an MMA rematch for PFL because she's got a different team, training team, corner team for that code. So Andy Aspinall has no problem getting into the US. We know Peter Fury does. He's said as much before. So you can understand why that could be in the US. Could the boxing rematch potentially be in Saudi?
Would love for it to be in Saudi. I mean, Saudi is kind of the new epicenter of boxing, and we'd certainly be more than open to explore that possibility. Clarissa's PFL fight earlier this year was in Saudi, so she had a great welcome, felt very comfortable in the country. I was there in December, had the same experience, so we'd love to explore. And I believe that actually, if the fights happen in Saudi, it will be bigger than anywhere else in the world, because just the symbolism of women empowerment and these two elite world-class athletes meeting in the sport would be so tremendous, particularly there. So would love to have those conversations. We have not had any yet, but certainly would love to explore that possibility.
And just on the subject of PFL, I'm sure you've now seen Savannah Marshall's recent debut in the MMA world. What did you make of it?
I think she did a great job. I mean, it was her first fight. It's a different environment. It's a different ring. It's a different gloves. Everything is different. The only thing that's the same is that it's a one-on-one sport. But I think that she did a great job, and she's a true fighter. I mean, she's a professional athlete. She's a true fighter, and she showed that she's a world-class performer, in that fight. And her power, I feel like, in some extent carried over. She's a big puncher. She's a big, strong girl, athletic, and she did a great job.
Good stuff. Now, just to take you away from your own fighters for a few moments, a couple of big fights we're anticipating. One that is actually signed and sealed, Tyson Fury's rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. Been a lot of talk about that recently, but you're good friends, of course, with SugarHill Steward. You worked with him for many years. He's obviously based in Detroit for the most part, although we see him over here quite a lot as well now. What do you make of the criticism, not necessarily against him specifically, but around Tyson Fury's corner in the first Usyk fight?
I know from my experiences as a fighter that there's lots of different people in a camp that have a relationship with the fighter and may want to exert it fight night. So, it's very difficult to really talk about it with knowledge, because we don't know what kind of goes on. I just look at it very simply. SugarHill is the trainer, and he's the guy that's been with him in camp and been with him through some of the greatest wars in heavyweight division. So they have a very intimate relationship. When the going gets tough, they get going. So this I think was a learning experience, a great fight. I believe that the rematch is great for the sport of boxing and for the heavyweight division, because there'll be much more interest for it, because the fight was so competitive and so tight. So I hopefully Sugar can it can be worked out where Sugar's voice is the one that carries weight. But but I think that they're experienced and knowledgeable enough to figure it out amongst themselves. I feel like I saw Aram's quote on it, and he said something to the effect that Sugar is the guy that serves the drink, and his voice should be supreme. And obviously, as you know, I'm a big believer in what he teaches and what he preaches. So I do believe that the camp and Tyson Fury will only benefit, from the extent of his knowledge.
Now, the other fight I wanted to ask you about, also at heavyweight, but it's one that, as far as we're aware, hasn't quite got over the line yet. We're all waiting here in the UK for the press conference we fully expect to happen tomorrow, Wednesday, as we film this. Sorry, today's Tuesday, to be announced soon enough. But we're expecting Anthony Joshua's next fight, the one for Wembley in September, to soon be confirmed. And widely speculated that Daniel Dubois will be in the opposite corner. We could render this question and answer irrelevant if he picks someone else at the last minute. However, if Joshua Dubois does come to fruition, what would you expect to happen?
First of all, so much respect to Daniel Dubois, who, last year in August was kind of counted out as it has been, and then incredible comeback wins against Jarrell, against Hrgovic, and now a possible fight against Anthony Joshua. Much respect to his trainer, who's done a fantastic job in being able to rehabilitate him physically and also mentally, which is so important. And same thing about Joshua. Joshua was kind of seemed as finished, a year ago, a little more than a year ago, and now he's back, arguably the top heavyweight in the division. So it's a great fight between two guys who have shown a lot of mental flexibility and strength and being able to pick themselves up from possibly the lowest places in their professional careers and rehabilitate themselves to now being at top of the division. So much respect for that. A very interesting fight. I believe that Joshua is still getting better, and was very impressed with him. I mean, in the last couple outings. And I believe that same goes for Daniel Dubois, who has shown a sturdy chin. When the going got tough, he got going. He has shown no signs of the criticism for his prior losses. His chin seems to stand up well. His stamina seems to be tremendous. It's a great fight. I guess outside of Tyson Fury versus Joshua, I believe that's probably the best, most competitive fight to make in the heavyweight division. And I'm very excited about it as a boxing fan. I got to sit down and look at it and think about it, who I pick as the favorite. Maybe Joshua is a slight favorite, but it's a great fight, and much respect to both guys for making it happen if it does happen.
Brilliant. And Dmitry, before I let you go, just to give you an opportunity to really sell the show on July 27th in Detroit, of course, headlined by Claressa Shields bidding for that heavyweight title and a WBO light heavyweight title in the same fight against Vanessa Wanis, however her surname's pronounced. We mean no disrespect, but what are people what can they expect from July 27th on DAZN?
Well, first of all, Detroit is going through its rebuilding as a city, and Little Caesars is a beautiful arena. To have Clarissa headline their first two professional boxing shows ever is really tremendous and historic. So it's really these events, I feel like, transcend just the sport of boxing and tell the story of the rebuilding of the city of Detroit, which is always very powerful. The undercard is going to be fantastic, and we're going to have, not yet announced, but you'll get the exclusive Michelle Rivera on the undercard, Georgia Hunter Gashev. Those will be the TV fights, and we're going to have another at least 7 undercard kind of non-main televised fights, showcasing some of the best local talent from the city of Detroit, state of Michigan, as well as from the United States and from abroad. It's going to be a fantastic, star-packed card, and I'm very excited about it. One of the things that I want to touch on that we haven't mentioned yet is the IBF mandatory for William Skull and Canelo Alvarez. I'm interested in that because I have Vladimir Shishkin, who's the official #2 contender. So we've been following it closely. Very interesting how that'll play out. And obviously, Canelo is a great fighter. But we'd love to make the fight with Shishkin and Skull. If Canelo does not fight William Skull next, I believe that that's been in play for a long time, and hoping that it happens, as Sugar has been in Vladimir's corner since almost the beginning of his career, and would be one of our first world champion, should that fight happen and should he win, that we had kind of, from very early in their career to the end. So that'd be very special, and I hope that it can happen relatively soon.
Well, fingers crossed. It's nice to see a sanctioning body putting a bit of pressure on Canelo. So fingers crossed. He either fights Skull or he vacates.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Very
Dmitry,
good.
always appreciate your time. Very best of luck with the show, and let's catch up again after and talk about the future for Clarissa.
Thank you, Danny.
All right. Take care. Speak soon.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.